as we head into what could be the final leg of this bull market, it's essential that you manage your picks and your plays correctly so that you don't get left leaving the bag. But how do you find quality projects and how do you find where the capital is flowing to make those picks correctly? Today, I'm going to share with you some invaluable knowledge as to how I've played this market and made astronomical gains in the past year. Hey guys, Sheldon Evans here, welcome back. Or if you're new here, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on all of those bell notifications to see more content like this. Before we get into this, I'm going to use Luna as an example, but I first want to announce that I am hosting a $50,000 crypto giveaway. As you guys know, in the previous video, I announced my NFT project that I'm working on and that will be releasing very soon. I'm giving away $50,000 in crypto, $25,000 in Ethereum, $25,000 in Solana, as well as 11 NFTs from the project. Now, we haven't withheld a bunch of NFTs for giveaways. We actually have a very small amount reserved for giveaways because we do want the project to actually have value and don't simply give away all the NFTs for free. But we have reserved some for this giveaway. So you can head over to the link in the description. It'll be in the top line of the description and in the top comment of this video. Go ahead, you can go daily and you can enter these daily. You can join the Discord, follow our Twitter and retweet and so on to increase your chances of winning. But let's get back into the video. Now, I'm going to be using Luna as an example here, purely because it has been a play that I can use as a good illustration. Now, this line on the chart here, this yellow line, this yellow vertical line, is the point at which I sold the majority of my Cardano for Luna. Now, the reason that I want to highlight this, and I keep coming back to this, is that the reason that I did this was not based on the technicals of the chart. The reason that I did this was not because I had insider information. The reason that I did this was purely based on sentiment. Now, sentiment is going to be your key word here in making astronomical gains as we head into the end of this year. Whether you like it or not, 90%, maybe even more, of the value that is in this market or the value of the capital that is allocated to certain projects in this market is based on hype. And what is hype? It is market sentiment. Now, you guys know that I've been a big proponent of Cardano for many, many months, and I made great gains on that too. But Cardano had done 100x since the point that I'd entered. Now, this is not to brag, it's not to rub it in your face, it's not to do that at all. It's all to say that I managed to judge sentiment correctly. Now, if you can understand humans and human emotion and human actions and human behavior, that will help you make the most gains in this market. You don't have to look at the charts. You simply have to look where the sentiment is moving. Now, Cardano had a very, very strong community behind it, a very loyal following, and it still does, right? But after those astronomical gains, a lot of that hype started dying down after the smart contracts were launched, after all of these updates and events had taken place. It's hard to sustain that hype. So what did we do? We looked for where that hype and that sentiment had shifted to, and where did it go? To other L1 projects, other layer 1 projects, like Solana, like Phantom, like Luna, for example. And the reason that I chose to invest in Luna is because I saw that it did have productive assets on it as well, on top of pure sentiment, right? So it has a strong project behind it. It has a lot of DeFi behind it. There's a lot of capital that is being allocated in a productive way, as well as a strong, dedicated community that are determined to make this a successful product, or successful project for that matter. So by noticing that and by seeing where the sentiment shift had changed, I managed to make this trade, right? So had I simply held on to Cardano at this point where I sold my Cardano for Luna, I would be down at this point around 50%. But by trading into Luna, I'm now up 150%. That is a massive gain purely based on sentiment, right? So today I'm going to show you how to use that sentiment to your advantage and make some good picks. Now, what is the major hype that's going on right now? What is the major thing that everybody's talking about that I spoke about in the previous video? The metaverse. Why is this happening? Well, of course, Facebook was the major catalyst to change their name to Meta and increase this hype. Now, judging sentiment, we've got a ton of different tools that we can use for this. And one of those is Google Trends. Now, you can use Google Trends for anything, whether it's checking sentiment around Bitcoin, whether it's checking sentiment around baby names, whether it's checking sentiment about where the best holiday destinations in the world are, which right now, for me, it's pretty much nowhere because I cannot leave my borders. But we have Metaverse seeing this massive, huge spike back here when Facebook basically announced their change of name to Meta. And that was a catalyst that sent a ton of Metaverse coins skyrocketing. They sent them absolutely astronomical based on that pure sentiment change, right? Now, Of course, it did come back down. It did correct. Metaverse coins did exactly the same thing. We had that major spike, and then they did come back down again, right? They have a bit of a correction. But what we've noticed is that we have a higher baseline, right? The search volume over time is higher at average than it was previously. That means the sentiment has changed. It means that it's circling around the back of people's heads. This could be something that could be the next major catalyst as we head into the end of the year, because people are already aware of it. Now, I have a background in marketing, and one of the most important things in marketing is knowing that your touch points with your customer has to be at least 7 times, right? If you want to sell something to someone, has to be 7 interactions with that person before they're likely to purchase your product. Now, that can be the same with any industry, and not necessarily just in sales. I'm talking about sentiment. The more frequently somebody hears about something, the more frequently it's said to them, the more likely they are to pay attention to it and possibly even hand over their hard-earned dollars for that said thing. And in this case, we're looking at the metaverse, right? As more and more people start hearing about the metaverse, as it becomes desensitized to this possible virtual world that we'll be living in, people are more likely to part with their dollars and invest in metaverse-related items, products, events, and so on. And with that being said, how do we find then which metaverse projects are important? How do we find where the volume is going to be going? Again, sentiment. I spend an unreasonable amount of time on Twitter and on news sites. And the reason is not that I'm tweeting a storm every single day, but it's because I'm looking at what other people are saying. I'm looking at sentiment. I'm searching for certain terms and seeing how many tweets are behind that certain term. If we look for a project, I see tons of people messaging me every single day. What about this project? What about that project? I've heard about this. My friend told me about that. If it's something that doesn't have hype behind it, if it's something that other people aren't talking about yet, it's probably not going to be a good investment. It's a speculative play at best, but what you need to do is look for things that people are already talking about. Not at the very end of that cycle, not after the hype has passed and everybody's talking about it, but you need to see where these little sparks, these little fireworks are popping off, that people start talking about new projects and new events within the metaverse, or with whichever industry you're interested in. If you're interested in DeFi, if you're interested in layer ones, whatever it is, look for where the hype is. We saw this very recently with a project known as Cardano, and Cardano is in the Terra ecosystem. We saw a ton of influencers start talking about it all of a sudden on Twitter. Massive hype for this project. It skyrocketed in price and then had to come down to correct. But we saw those sparks start firing off right at the beginning, and that's what we're seeing again with the metaverse. We see a ton of these projects slowly but surely being mentioned here and there. One of these in particular is UFO gaming. Now, I first got notified about this. Somebody DM'd me on Twitter telling me about UFO gaming. It's this meme gaming token. And it's going to be incredible. It's going to be huge. And I first brushed it aside, but then I saw other influencers and other people talking about it. Now, there's this misconception that every project that influencers talk about is a sponsored or paid project, or they have some sort of incentive to promote that. While that is the case, perhaps they have seed allocation, perhaps they have a early allocation, perhaps they've been paid in tokens, perhaps they've been even paid by the project. And this goes undisclosed all over the crypto space. The crypto sphere, it happens all the time that people don't disclose that they have a vested interest in these projects. But that doesn't matter to you as the investor. All you're managing here, all you're looking for is sentiment. So when these influencers start talking about that, whether it's paid or not, it doesn't matter, because there are going to be more influencers, there are going to be more names, there's going to be more people talking about it, about this said project or whatever it is. The hype is going to drive that project. It's going to drive the growth. As I've said in the beginning of this video, 90% of the value is based on hype. That's going to pump the price of these projects, and that's where you make your gains. It doesn't matter what the underlying incentive is for these people that are talking about these projects. The idea is that you, as the viewer or the investor, can capitalize on whatever is going on behind the scenes, because I can guarantee you there's a lot of shady stuff that goes on, but it doesn't matter. You can still use it to your advantage. Now, how do I find which project I'm looking for? Where do I look to find this sentiment? As I said, like I've said, you can use Twitter, you can use news sites and so on. Then you can, of course, use CoinGecko. Go to the Metaverse Coins. I'm going to be using this as an example. See where the gains are happening. When something pumps 42%, stand back, look at it again, and figure out, has this passed? What is this hype? What's driving this right now? Am I going to be shaken out of my bags? If you see other coins pumping and you see other projects pumping and your bags aren't, first think about how much those coins have pumped before buying into them, because if you do that, often you'll be chasing the pump and wrecking yourself and then FOMOing back and forth between different coins. So what you need to do is, before you invest anything, look where the sentiment and hype is and invest in those, and simply sit back and wait and look what happens to the sentiment. If it doesn't increase, if it dies off, reinvest, look somewhere else. Don't get married to your bags. Don't get married to these coins, because they aren't loyal to you either. Now, one thing that you can use is something known as DApp Radar. Now, DApp Radar has a ton of different stats and metrics to help you find good projects. But if we're looking for, let's say, metaverse coins or blockchain games and so on, how do we pick out which ones are important, where the volume's going? Well, we can look at user count, right? So if we look at blockchain games, look at how many users are actually playing those games. That is the productive side of the asset, meaning that people are actually interacting, are actually using these games, playing in them, investing money into these games, earning from these games. So there's the productivity side to that, right? Then we can look at sentiment. Here's another site called playtooearn.net, and this will help you judge market sentiment. It will judge the social engagement of certain projects over the last 7 days, over the last 24 hours, and you see where that sentiment's going. So, for example, we can see Axie Infinity has had a rise over the last 7 days, so possibly that could be a good play because there's a lot more sentiment, a lot more movement happening into that. We're going to look at something like The Art of War. We look at something like Sandbox. All of these had major growth in the last few days, so perhaps that's where their money's going. Thetan Wars is another one that's very, very hype right now. We can see it's been rising over the past 7 days. So look at all of these different metrics and then come up in your head with your own sort of structure, or your own sort of guideline as to what you're looking for: sentiment, actual productivity, actual users, people investing in these things. Judge the sentiment on Twitter and then decide whether you want to invest in that. Now, of course, you have to keep in mind, of course, market cap as well. What could be the next big project? Now, many, many months ago, I gave you guys a very key piece of information, which is look for the big brother effect, right? So Sandbox is huge right now, $6 billion. Decentraland, $6 billion. What could be the next Decentraland? What could be the next Sandbox? Now, don't go looking too far down the rabbit hole. Don't go looking for projects that are 500,000 market cap or 50-cent market caps or whatever, like really, really small. Look for larger cap projects, let's say within the $50 to $100 million market cap region, and see what is important here. Where's the hype going? Which projects are selling land? Who are they integrated with? Do they have any partnerships with gaming studios? Do they have any partnerships with huge companies? And that's how you can judge sentiment. One of the key projects that I spoke about many years ago, or many months ago as well, is Chain Games. Now, Chain Games had an astronomical rise after I mentioned. I think it did 100x within the month. So we mentioned it around here, which was, of course, 2 cents, and it skyrocketed to $1. And what caused this major spike here? Their possible partnership, or at the time it was a partnership, with Fortnite, a massive global game. That is just a sentiment, pure-driven hype move, right? And this is an opportunity, it would have been an opportunity for you to take profits because you were maximizing or capitalizing on the sentiment change. Now, that partnership never ended up going through. There was a pull out and Fortnite came out of that. And of course, we saw the breakdown of that. But what I'm highlighting here is that you need to look out for these key events, see where the hype is driven, see who's backing these projects, where they're moving from side to side. Another one of these, to give you an example, is Travala, right? Travala is a travel-based project that I also mentioned back when it was a couple cents, and it skyrocketed in price. Why? Because the narrative around travel changed when the restrictions started lifting towards the end of last year. There was a ton of different things happening that pushed this travel narrative, right? Then we have a project which I, in fact, am a seed investor in as well, which is known as D-Travel. And D-Travel has pretty much the same sort of incentive, right? It's similar to Travala. It's actually the Airbnb of crypto. And they have this narrative behind it. Why? Because they're tapping into the current metaverse narrative, right? Before co-founding the Sandbox game, Sebastian spent the past decade working in startups, advancing mobile gaming. Learn about his entrepreneurial achievements here. Is from Sandbox, a massive, massive metaverse or blockchain gaming company. And he's now moved over to D-Travel. What does this mean? Well, we could see some hype move away from that into this because he has a following. There's a sentiment change. You're following where the hype is going. You're following who this guy is. And that's pretty much what you can do in every sort of industry in crypto, is follow where the big minds are going, where the money's moving, where the narrative is going. If people are past MIT students, if people are past professors. It doesn't matter what they're doing, but you need to understand their history. You need to understand human emotion. You need to understand human behavior. And that will help you maximize your gains in this market. Now, to give you another example of this, if we look at Bored Apes as an example in the NFT space, right? Bored Apes are probably the biggest crypto project right now, the biggest NFT crypto project, right? Why? It's purely based on sentiment. We have celebrities buying Bored Apes. We have celebrities investing in Bored Apes, putting them in their music videos, putting them in their TV shows. We have TV show spin-offs happening off of them. Why? It's not because these people are buying these products to invest in them. They're buying them as a form of clout, a form of status, a form of affiliation, right? It's an affiliation with this unique, very important, exclusive club. And that's a sign of sentiment. So even if these influencers are being paid to purchase these Bored Apes, which we've noticed that is what's happening, right? A lot of them are being paid to buy Bored Apes, and that, of course, helps the entire Bored Ape collection as a whole. But what is it doing? It's maximizing the sentiment or the narrative behind this being this exclusive club, this blue chip project. And that's all you need to care about. All you need to care about is association, affiliation, news, hype around all of these projects in the space if you do want to be successful in this. And you would have seen that I had crypto.com open here as well, because this is one of those projects as well that I spoke about when it was really, really, really tiny, couple cents as well. And it had a recent blow off top and a recent rise. Why? Because of the sentiment change. It's a fantastic company. They've been bought stadiums, bought arenas, changed the name to crypto.com arena. All of these things, this is hype, this is news-based growth, and it's an opportunity to take profits, and it's an opportunity to make money because you followed the hype and you understand where it's moving in the market. The first thing that I want to talk about before we get into anything else as well is FTX. So FTX, hopefully I'm the first one that can drop this news. This is the kind of information that I do want to be sharing in the future in the Discord. So if you haven't yet, go join that. FTX US is going to be launching NFTs on Ethereum. So as you guys know, the FTX NFT marketplace is currently Solana-based NFTs. They will be launching Ethereum as well, which is another reason why we decided to launch on Ethereum, our personal project, because most of the value, most of the sentiment, whether we like it or not, is on Ethereum, right? That's where most of the value in the market is, especially in DeFi, especially in NFTs, is on Ethereum. FTX has noticed this as well, and that's why they're launching this. But some key information that is quite cool is compared to OpenSea, compared to other marketplaces, FTX is not going to charge you anything for listing, for buying, selling, for adjusting your bids, for bidding on NFTs. It's going to be completely free, gasless. You'll simply be able to list your NFTs on there for free and make some trades and sales that way, which is phenomenal, especially for Ethereum NFTs, because that is one of the major hindrances in ETH NFTs, is because people can't afford those fees to list and trade and so on. So this is an important piece of information here. I just want to note that I'm not sponsored by FTX. I have no affiliation with them at all. I simply have this information because FTX has been kind enough to announce that they will be supporting our project, Your Mom's House, after launch. So that's some good information if you care to learn about that. But now let's talk about sentiment again, right? So essentially what I'm telling you here is all you have to be looking at is where the hype is going. Search for the different projects on Google, search for the different projects on Twitter, see what the hype is happening around them. For example, Render recently had a ton of hype when the metaverse pumped, because who's going to render the metaverse? Of course, it's going to be a Render token. Now, it could be a variety of different projects. It could be a Akash network. It could be Render. It could be Amazon. Who knows? But if you maximized or capitalized on that hype when that sentiment changed, you'd be sitting very, very pretty right now. And before we close off the video, I just want to speak to you guys about the Crypto Fear and Greed Index and the end of the market. I do think we still have a way to go before we do have a blow off top, or even if we do and we have an extended bull market. We have the Fear and Greed Index sitting at 34, which is pretty good. It means we're in fear. And as you know, that's not a bad thing. That's actually a really good thing, because if Bitcoin's currently sitting at what, $58,000, $59,000, and fear is at 34, it means that there's room for people to buy into the market for us to move up to the upside. If we're at extreme greed and we're at $58,000, I would say we've got a problem, but we do have good sentiment. Again, this is doing is judging sentiment. If you scroll down, you can see how they measure, where do they get their data sources from. A lot of it is based on trends. A lot of it is based on social media. This is a sentiment-driven indicator, and you can use that to your advantage to time the market correctly, make your picks, make good gains, and hopefully make some life-changing wealth. I hope you guys liked that video. If you haven't yet, go ahead and enter the giveaway. It is a good giveaway. Join our Discord, come in there and chat. I pop in there from time to time. We're talking about cool stuff, whether it's crypto, philosophy, books, your grandmother's shoes. We'll have a chat. If you made it this far, please comment down below this video, your mom's house. And I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.